Rants. Do you ever think about the rants that you post? Well, clearly I don't think enough about the rants that I post, because this is coming out a few hours after the end of November. But I listen to The Unnatural, which for those of you who don't know, is an audio drama podcast. It is of the genre horror, and I was asked to rant about it by Artemis Locke. Thank you. If anybody else wants a rant, honestly, just ask me to rant about something in the comments. I'll probably just rant about it because I want to rant about it. I just like talking. So yeah, let's get on with the video. Basically, the rant request in particular, asked me to talk about the creep factor of The Unnatural, which, as an audio drama podcast, so essentially it's just the audio component, which was incredibly crisp, by the way. The audio quality, the mixing, and everything was like perfect. Like it sounded like really professional. But there are certain limitations to only having audio. Taken from someone who really likes audio stories, it's very freeing because it lets you fill in the blanks. It leaves you to imagine all of the grittier details, which is sort of a double-edged sword, because on one hand it allows the viewer to make it as creepy and as to their particular sensibilities as possible, but on the other hand it does give the viewer a sense of I suppose control that sort of counteracts the lack of control that a lot of horror is supposed to instill. But it has trade-offs, so I think it's definitely unique. I didn't go into this having like the highest hopes for the scare factor in particular, as much as I did like the actual like character writing and the story. But I was very pleasantly surprised, because I'm a really big fan of body horror, and this series is essentially, there's more to it than them just being zombies, but it is essentially about zombies, which is pretty much like, if you just hear that something's about zombies, it's like a very boring horror premise. But these zombies are described in brutal detail, in grotesque detail, and I absolutely loved it. And the formatting of it as an audio drama really allowed my imagination to run wild with just like these crazy contortions of humans that, this is sounding pretty twisted now that I say it out loud, but watching horror media is kind of weird and twisted no matter what, if you think about it. But that was the thing that immediately stuck out to me as something that I could find very, very appealing on a personal level. As far as the character writing and like the actual narrative of it goes, in totality, it's like an hour and a half long. This is a fairly short story. It's essentially the length of a movie, and there are a good deal of characters introduced throughout. There is, besides the narrator, there is Barella. Well, actually, I suppose it is pretty. There is like just a few main characters, and then there's a lot of side characters that goes through. But there is Sandoval, who is sort of dead by the time the series starts, but sort of catalyzes most of the events that happen, or his death sort of catalyzes most of the events that happen. And he's sort of the thing that holds it all. The thing that holds it all together, the thing that the story sort of takes its form around. And there is a lot of terrible things happening with dead bodies, pretty much. And it's interesting because it's sort of like bodies that are desecrated, that are, I guess the best way I could put it is, there are points in the series where they talk about like death, and they talk about how somebody, when they die, they're just freeing themselves from the material plane, and they're actually in like a much more peaceful place, and it's more of an ascendance than a loss, and to them it is infinitely, enlightening, and all these things that make death sound very beautiful. But it's contrasted by these zombies that look like accordions of meat with bones sticking out everywhere, and like Christ-like imagery with like the barbed wire crown and like all this stuff. It's like very brutal dichotomy. But it is all in the way you look at it, because both of those perspectives are valid and valuable ways to view the idea of death. Like, I think a lot of people could agree that seeing the actual physical reality of a dead body is pretty morbid, but that isn't necessarily mutually exclusive to believing that there is a sense of ascendance to death and moving on to the next stage of existence or lack thereof. It's definitely very, very interesting. It's a story about choices, which is something that you'll realize if you listen to the first 10 seconds of it, but it's also, very importantly, a story about faith. There is a lot of supernatural things happening. There is a lot of... I guess I don't particularly know the right word for it, but there's a lot of occultic stuff going down in this narrative, and a lot of it is about what is beyond our understanding and what we decide to put faith in, and what we decide to be, I guess, sort of willfully ignorant of. The main character is somebody who, of course, is coming off of a very essentially traumatic event, as his partner and close friend recently committed the self-delete, and it's clearly affecting him massively. He's almost spiraling a little bit out of control, and he's losing sight of what his priorities really are in his life, which is a big part of sort of his arc, coming to those realizations the hard way, the ugly way, But it's his willful ignorance to the clear supernatural phenomenon happening. It's his unwillingness to accept the horrors that are right in front of them, and his unwillingness to confront them in the immediate sense, that ultimately doesn't lead to his demise, but leads to a lot of problems for him, and leads to a lot of ruptures and relationships, especially familially, and also with his partner. But his not like his romantic part, like his police partner. He's a cop. He's a cop with a salt and pepper haircut and a disheveled shirt clinging to his body. But that's besides the point. I'm getting off track. I really like the medium of audio dramas because it allows for imagery. I really like imagery and personification and all that stuff, and I like the vocal aspect as well. But basically, it's a story. A lot of it is about faith, what you choose to believe, because faith it's something that, by definition, I guess, you sort of can't have much of a reasoning for, as it's supposed to be, unwavering. It's supposed to be absolute, but there are elements to it that are a choice. You choose what you put your faith in. And a lot of people will willfully choose to... Well, I guess it's more not so much that you choose what you put your faith in, but you choose how you act on your faith. Your faith isn't a choice. Your faith is what you believe in. But if you stand in denial of what you believe in, that's where the problems start coming up. I don't know that it's so much of a choice as it is a choice to accept what it is that you believe. I think that deep down it's very hard to change those sort of beliefs, but it's definitely, I think there's room for most beliefs. It's not something that necessarily needs to be changed in all circumstances, but when the unnatural is looking you right in the eye is when it's probably important to be realistic about what you believe about the situation, because people are going to start dying and getting turned into meat accordions and stuff. So it's definitely very important. It's sort of like he hasn't quite moved on from this event. That's totally understandable for him not to have moved on from, but sort of like the entire town around him has, because it's a town, like things have to keep going, police have to keep policing, somebody has to fill his place. Barella has obligations to his family, all of these things, but he's just not all there at the moment. And the corpses of people, dead bodies, like a symbol of the past in a lot of instances, are still coming back to haunt the town. It's like the town has moved on from the death of Carlos Sandoval, but there are still remnants of not only his death, but the death of many others, many people who seem to go like mostly unseen by society, that are haunting the town, and that are causing major problems because they're being, they're being left alone to fester, essentially. It's definitely it's a spooky story. It's a very spooky story in the sense that it isn't... Okay, it's not that it isn't the most unrealistic thing, because I don't think zombies are realistically going to just start popping up. But, I mean, personally, I don't. But it is a fear that's a little bit more rooted in realism, the fear of dead bodies. Because the fear of dead bodies is sort of, at least in my opinion, a fear of, like, the pain that your own body can experience. People talk about, like, I forget what it's called, but it's like reflexive empathy, where when you see somebody get injured, it makes you like hold your, if you see someone hurt their foot, it'll make you like hold your foot or something, because you're imagining it happening to you. When it comes to body horror, that's what a lot of the fear and discomfort is, and where it derives from. So it's sort of a reminder of your own fragility, or a reminder of your own lack of control, a reminder of the parts of you that you don't have total control of, and how susceptible to, being manipulated and contorted and made to be grotesque you really are. And in that sense, it goes back to the fact that these are dead bodies, and, the very concept of death, whenever it comes up, it sort of starts to remind people of this looming, massive existential question that is the most important thing of the in the world, that most people never have a satisfying answer to, but just have to live their lives in spite of it and just have to go on like nothing's happened, when in reality they have like an enormous existential problem that they don't really know what they believe about the afterlife and about anything like that. And that can cause them, probably like Barella, it can cause them to sort of lose track of a lot of the priorities in their life and start being irresponsible or unfair to people that they've made social commitments to, and etc. Sorry, this rant is all over the place. I just listened to this podcast. It's not really a podcast. I just listened to this audio drama, and my mind's kind of bouncing off the walls right now. But I think that aspect of it is pretty cool. It death, the dead bodies sort of bring you back to a sense of fragility. It brings you back. It forces you to it forces you to consider something that is always in the back of your mind, that you always know is true, but so many people haven't necessarily come to terms with, haven't resolved. And it's something that's incredibly important to pursue, spirituality and things of this nature. At least that's my reading of it. There is a lot of more grounded character interactions that happen. I guess the sort of second main character, the deuteragonist, if you will, is a significantly more... He oftentimes acts as the voice of reason. And he is somebody who is a bit more open-minded to these sort of spiritual things. He's a bit more in tune with his emotions and all the ranges. You hear him laugh, you hear him not cry, but speak very wistfully, I guess. You sort of see the full range of emotions, and you see him sort of living his whole life, which is admittedly very stressful, and requires him to work with Barella, who there is a lot of tension between, because Barella essentially wants to lie about certain things and be in denial about certain things, and the other character, his name is Ramos, he has to sort of work with that. Like, that's his partner. He has to work with this guy's problems, and he has to sort of cope and come to terms with how to move forward in the best way, with all of these disagreements with this other guy, pretty much. I really want to discuss the finer details of it, but the problem is, my brain is just, I'm kind of like very scatterbrained. This is a very all over the place rant because I don't really know where to start, where to end. Every time I have like a train of thought, it sort of like gets sidetracked at some point by like something else that I happen to remember about the story. So I just want to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was very pleasantly surprised. I'm personally a very big fan of the body horror aspect, and I would love to talk more with you personally about some of the narrative intricacies and things like that. Overall, I'm really glad I listened to this audio drama, and that's pretty much it. I look forward to ranting again next month.